was working on window sash, getting it in the frame here, and I created, you know, some casing to go around the outside of this. But I screwed up. Can anybody spot my error? It's a little too tight. So I think what I did, I measured the width of the sash, I measured the distance between the studs, I accounted for the 3/4 inch casing wood here. What I did not account for was the additional depth of the tar paper that I folded back in here. So that's just about how tight this sash is in the window. So this is going to have to open up somehow. Now, one way to do it, I could plane off the sides of the sash, but I don't really want to do that. You've got these joints in here that I just don't want to get into. So I think it wasn't the sash's fault, it was my fault. So I think what I'll do is I will try to plane this down and make it just a little bit thinner and give me back that little bit of play I need to get this sash to fit in there. Now, there's a couple ways I could do it. I could use a hand plane, but I'm not a hand plane woodworker guy. I've got a couple, and I could probably make it work, but it wouldn't be pretty. Another thing I could do is drag out another tool that I haven't used for 10 years. It's going to need cleaned up, and it's going to need, you know, sharpened or something. So I've got a little portable planer down here. Let me show it to you. What we have here is the Delta TP305. What that means, I don't know. TP, I'm guessing thickness planer, and 305, I don't know. And it's dirty. It needs some love. Again, it hasn't been plugged in over 10 years. And it shows it. I'm going to, I don't know what I'm going to do. It's kind of rusty in some important places. Let me see what I can do about that. Take a look in here. These posts at the corner are what the cutter head ride up and down on when you adjust the thickness, and they are a little bit rusty. And they're not going to ride up and down very well on a rusty post. So I don't know what it's going to take to get this thing apart far enough to get those cleaned up. Around back here, this is where the cutter head lives, underneath of this cover. Let me see if I can get that off. So this is the cutter head. It's got two full-length straight blades that go across here. And you can see the cutter head is a bit rusty on its own. There's a second blade. Oh, it's even rustier back there. I must have moved it around. Now I believe these blades are double-sided. So if I remove these screws and take this cover plate off and flip the blade over, I should be able to get a fresh edge on there. I mean, this thing really hasn't been used that much. The blades are rusty, but they're probably not that dull. So I should be able to clean them up and sharpen them a little bit, get a little more life out of those edges, but that cutter head's got to get cleaned up. Now this is actually a feature. It's a pretty handy carry handle in case you got to move the thing around. It's padded on top. This is actually advertised as a way to move the boards once they've fed through your planer. You pick them up, you put them on here, you roll them back to the other side so you can put them through and plane them again. So it's actually kind of a return roller. I don't know if anybody ever uses it for that, but that's what it's there for. look at that. These are actually metal side plates. That speaks pretty well. See, it does have some shavings in there. I mean, some of this is, there's some seeds in there, but I think a lot of this is honest usage. Now I just have to figure out how to, I guess I could clean these up like this since I can now get to them mostly. If I had to, just wrap some sandpaper around here and clean them up. They don't look too bad. And I can use the handle to wind this thing up and down and, get to the parts that I can't see if they're rusted underneath it here. Doesn't want to move. Oh, I haven't used it for so long. I don't know if there's some kind of a lock, where you crank it down to what you need and lock it in place. I don't remember. Does anybody remember? Do you have one of these? Have you used something similar? It acts like it wants to go at the back, but the front is in place. Is there a lock? Is that even the front? I don't even know. All right, take a look at this for a minute. Not too bad. Let's get some. Got some 600 grit here. See if that smooths it up enough, or if I should go upper. It looks pretty stained. This side feels pretty smooth. It is a little more pitted on the back. Let's see what we can do. That's the way it's supposed to work. I'm wondering if I take it the whole way up, does the carriage just lift off the posts? Doesn't appear to have any stop. This one's already through. Let's go a little bit farther. Well, you lose the ability to raise it once the crank pops off. No, that's not the answer. Well, if nothing else, I can clean up the rest of the posts. On the way down, I can clean up this screw. I guess I just crank it back down. Then I'll figure out how to get to these blades and this cutter head. Now, if you've never been inside one of these things before, as clearly I have not, the cutter head is spun from the other side, and it goes from the motor up top to a chain that turns, actually it's a belt. It's a flat V-belt that turns the cutter head. And over here, there must be a reduction gear. You can't see it from here. There must be some kind of reduction gear that goes between this end of the cutter head and this jack shaft. And then this chain drives these two rollers. There are rollers on either side of the cutter head that turn, of course, a lot more slowly than the cutter head. And that advances the board through the planer so that it can get a nice cut. The thickness, the rollers also hold the board flat against the platen here so that you can get a consistent thickness on the top of the board. So that's the inside of one of these things, and it looks okay. I'll probably clean that up a little bit just to get the gunk out of there, but maybe throw a little oil. I know WD-40 is not oil, but I do have some other light oil here. But it doesn't look too bad. I'll call that good and then clean up the rest of this stuff. Right, the posts are cleaned up okay. The screws look all right. Let me see if I can get these blades out of here. Allen head screws are great. Those had been Phillips head, never would have come out. Springs. Something to lose. Alright, let's see if I was told a lie. One spring on the end. another spring on the other end. Don't let me forget that. And the blade. Oh wow, they're tiny. I thought they'd be full width. They are tiny, and they are double-sided. And they've got the little Delta logo right on there. Alright, so what do? Do I flip them over, or do I sharpen this edge and go with them? Yeah, let's flip them over. I think they're cheap. But I will take the other side off, and then I'll try to clean up this cutter head. It's a little rough. Okay, this side actually came up pretty good. It wasn't as bad. The other side, not quite as good. I don't think a little bit of rust is going to throw off the rotating mass and change the balance of the cutter head. What I was concerned about was underneath the cap where the blade sits, and as long as that is flat and true, I'm okay with that. Sorry, planer, but if it's a little bit ugly, I can deal with it as long as it works right. Let's get these blades back on. Springs first. Blade turned around. These blades, instead of having just a hole to sit in the pin, it's a slot. And what I've heard is, if you hit something when you're planing and it makes a nick in both blades, those blades are going to have that nick in the same spot, clearly. You can go in here, if you want to extend the length of your, the length of the life of your blades a little bit, you can then offset the two blades from each other and put that nick offset so that what the one blade misses, the other blade will pick up, and you'll have a smoother cut for just a little bit longer. That might be completely bogus, but that's what I'm going with. Now the cap also has one pin in the center to catch that blade. So 2 pins on the outside on the cutter head, 1 pin on the inside for the cap, and that locks in the blade. I mean, they sent me alignment pins. I don't see there's any other way to line these things up besides that. And the other one's the same thing. Okay, I've got it all put back together. It's cleaned up, it's de-rusted somewhat. It's not beautiful, but I'm going to deem it serviceable. Now that's, we haven't even plugged it in yet, haven't even turned it on, so I hope it still runs. Seems like everything should be all right. I cleaned up the platen down here and put some silicone spray on it because, the boards are supposed to slide under pretty well. I don't really have a good way to clean up the rollers, they still feel a little bit rubbery, which they're supposed to be to catch the wood and pull it in. So I guess the only way to try it out is just to try it out. Let's give it a shot. One thing I do remember about this tool, I believe it was the noisiest tool in the shop. So this is going to get loud. I've got a bit here. It's a 1x6. This is basically the same stuff that I'm going to be cutting. So I'll just run this through as a test. To be honest, I'm not even sure which side to feed this stuff into. All the controls are facing this side, so I'm going to assume this is the in feed and that's the out feed. It'll be funny if it's not right. All right, let me crank this down to the width that I want. This is 3/4 wood. I'm going to start there on the marker because I don't know exactly if that's true or not. In feed and out feed tables are down and flat. If this thing starts dancing, I'll have to turn it off. But another thing I remember is that it throws a lot of chips. Now that looks pretty good, actually. Flipping those blades over, I think might have been the right choice. That is super smooth. I'm not seeing any, sometimes when you put boards through, especially with this type of cutter head, since it only has 2 straight blades, when it goes through, you will see it making individual chips, and you can see those horizontal lines across with the chips that it makes. But this looks pretty good, definitely acceptable for construction grade. One thing I am seeing, and this is typical for a lot of small planers and even bigger planers, because of the way those rollers work, there's one on the in feed and one on the out feed, and they move to be able to press the wood down. When the wood comes in, the first roller goes up, goes under the cutter blade. When the wood hits the second roller, it rides up on the wood as well. And again, when it goes out the other side, as the wood passes under the first roller, it drops down a little bit, and the cutter head with it. And that little bit of extra cut that you get on the end is referred to as snipe. So I'm seeing a little bit of snipe here. You don't know if you can see it or not. There's a little line that goes right across there, and you can kind of feel where the cutter head has dropped. And what that's going to do is, if you measure this board right here, especially since I planed both sides, I've got snipe on both sides. This end is going to be a little bit thinner than the center is. Now, the only way to really keep that from affecting your workpiece is to plane a piece that's longer than what you need, so that you can cross-cut away that narrower sniped end. Another way to do it is to feed another piece of wood before or after it, so that that roller never changes height as it's cutting your workpiece. So just some little thickness planer tips there for you. But it seems to be working okay. So let's get our side pieces for the window, run those through here. Window pane should be able to fit in the hole again. Yeah, it made a lot of chips. That was just those 3 boards just for practice, and I got this much.